Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Monty Hall. That's pretty good, actually. I didn't think I could get any cheers at this hour on this day. Welcome to the session entitled My Brain Hurts. I want to recycle a joke real quick. Earlier I said this session was going to teach you how to get rid of that annoying headache that you've had for the last 4 days. Yeah. I'm going to work on that joke a little more. Many of you attended the session earlier in this camp on copyright, and you remember Stichting BREIN, and you remember some of the other players. Is that a boo? Oh, yeah, why not? Well, today we have something related but different. We have Arnold van Engelfried, who is a lawyer representing FTD, which he will explain better than I ever could. And, well, let's get to it instead of listening to me. Arnold, take it away.
Here. Test, 0, 1, test. Yes. Okay, good afternoon. I'm Arnold Engelfried. I'm an IT lawyer, blogger, and associate at ICT Reg Legal Services in Beverwijk. I hope everybody can hear me, even at the back. Okay, great, at the back. And today I'm here to give a talk because I'm representing FTD, which stands for Fill Threads Database, and you can forget about that right away, together with the law firm Wenkebach Bax Brunt from Haarlem in its lawsuit against the BREIN Foundation. I'm going to do a talk explaining a little about what's going on in the lawsuit, what the background is, and some of my views about copyright. If you have questions or would like to respond to anything I say, just go ahead, because otherwise I'll keep on talking for the whole hour, and that's fun for nobody, so feel free to interrupt. But first let's talk about Stichting BREIN, which stands for Bescherming Rechten Entertainment Industry Nederland, or Protecting the Rights of the Entertainment Industry in the Netherlands, or as some people call it, the Dutch RIA, which you may have heard of. Except, of course, they have a little pun that BREIN means brain, and that's because it's intellectual product. So, to clear some things up, BREIN is not a government agency. It's not like the police, the copyright police, or whatever you want to call it. It's not the fiat or the economic police that tries to lock people up for doing things against the law. BREIN is an industry lobby group or an industry lawsuit group that is responsible for enforcing copyrights and trying to get people to adhere to their view of how copyright should work and what people should do on the internet. FTD is, well, as I said, stands for Fill Threads Database. It's a software application that had lots of threads and lots of databases that needs to be filled, hence the name. And it works on Usenet. I've been using Usenet for about 15 years now. Back when you could still debate with people and have discussions, more or less civilized. But today, most people only use it to download stuff. Just curious, how many people download stuff from Usenet? Okay, great. How many people upload stuff to Usenet? Okay, you're illegal. unless it's, of course, licensed or open source, and you can do it. Okay, so downloading stuff from Usenet is legal, or at least that's what I would say if I were not a lawyer, but I am a lawyer, so there's going to be a disclaimer here. In the Netherlands, downloading is legal. I noticed there's some Belgians here, some Germans here, even some French, and I guess some other countries as well. In the Netherlands, downloading is legal, but it has to be for your own private use. So if you download stuff and then you upload it, or you download it and you give it to other people, it's not legal. But it can only be audio and video, so movies, songs, video clips, that kind of stuff, but not software in particular. And not entire books or e-books. It's only audio and video that you can download legally for your own private use. Even when this is uploaded from an illegal source. So if one of those, could you go to the microphone please, then I can hear you better. Oh.
colleague behind me reminded me and said, like, so downloading Unix is actually illegal or not?
You're saying downloading Linux, is that legal?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's not audio and video, and software was illegal?
Yeah. Okay. It's a good question. What about software? Well, the law says if you want to download software like Linux, you have to get permission from the copyright holder or holders. Fortunately for Linux, we have that permission because all the contributors to Linux have licensed their works under the GPL, which permits uploading and downloading. So it's legal to do that. If somebody were to post, say, SCO Unix somewhere on the internet, you could not download it legally, even if you wanted to, because the copyright holders do not give you permission for that. So it depends. For software, you have to look at the license. It could be shareware or freeware or open source or free software for people who like that term better. That's the kind of stuff you can upload and download. But if it's like Microsoft Office or Adobe Photoshop, you need to get permission from the copyright holder before you can up or download that. You can, however, make a spare copy of any software that you own. But that's only, you can make it if you have bought it legally or acquired it legally, and then you can make a spare copy, a backup copy. So downloading is legal with all these disclaimers. FTD is not actually a Usenet client or a Usenet platform or a Usenet server. FTD is what's called a spotters forum. So it's like a forum for discussion or debate, except that what people do is they say what they spot or what they see on Usenet. FTD has no hyperlinks, NZB files or torrents or any other mechanisms that allow you to upload or download stuff. This thing is broken. All FTD does is allow you to say, in this particular news group, I have seen this particular movie and it has this particular title, good luck downloading it. That's basically what FTD is. So if you have downloaded something, or if you are downloading something, you can tell others about it, and you can go to that particular news group, and they can download it themselves. That's the idea behind FTD. Now, as we said in the lawsuit, if that is legal, then so is this summons, or so is this presentation. Because if you can download something legally, then it should also be legal to tell other people, hey, you can download something legally over there. And this is at the heart of the differences between FTD and BREIN. BREIN argues that it should be illegal to tell other people where you can find stuff for illegal downloading, because they even disagree that downloading is legal. And so we were at a point where we had decided to go to court to ask the court to actually declare that downloading is legal, to confirm that downloading is legal, and also to declare that what FTD is doing, so offering the platform like this, is legal as well. So where are we now with the lawsuit? On May 18, FTD sued BREIN. We started what's called a bodemprocedure, so that's the complete lawsuit with all the bells and whistles. It's going to take about a year and a half for it to be completely decided. In June, I'm sorry. Why does it take so long? Well, why the lawsuit? Well, that's a good question. Let me give you a little more background there. FTD was approached by BREIN somewhere in December last year, and BREIN said, you have to shut down your website because you cannot allow people to say this kind of thing. And you cannot allow people to identify stuff that's on Usenet. Even if downloading is legal, which we disagree with, you cannot tell other people that they can download it there, because then you are facilitating the uploading of material. Because what's going on FTD, people that make good spots, as they're called, that tell people about this stuff, they get kudos. So they get famous and they get recognition. And that's a kind of reward. So you are encouraging people, you are rewarding people for identifying illegal uploads. You're also allowing people to spot their own stuff. So people upload movies and then go to FTD and they say, hey, I've just uploaded this movie, or somebody, quote, quote, has uploaded that movie and you can download it. And that kind of stuff should be illegal, so you should not have this particular forum, you should not allow people to say this kind of thing. FTD made some adaptations and made sure that the text all clearly stated what FTD is about and what FTD is not about. But still, BREIN felt this was not enough. And we started the lawsuit to go to court and to clarify once and for all that downloading indeed is legal, and that if it is legal to download, it's also legal to tell people where you can download that material. So on May 18th, FTD sued BREIN and said, we want a declaration from the court that confirms that downloading for private use is legal. We also want a declaration that says that what FTD is doing is legal. And we also want BREIN to publicly post an apology on its website saying we should not have called FTD illegal and criminal in its activities, which they did in a newspaper, the Volkskrant, in January of this year. And it seems I have forgotten the sheet about that. But I can give you a copy if you want. So we're asking for what's called a declaration from the court, een verklaring voor recht, that confirms that what FTD is doing is legal. In response, BREIN countersued, an eis in re conventie for the Dutch people. So they said, well, you can ask all of that, but we disagree completely with that. But now that we are here in the court anyway, we ask the court to shut down FTD and to pay a big fine for every day that they stay open, and to pay a big fine for all the damages they have done to the people that we represent. We are right now preparing our response to that, and I have to get back to work this afternoon actually to finish this, and we hope to file it in a couple of weeks. After that, BREIN gets one more chance to respond, because we started it, they get the last word. And then there will be a hearing, so we will all have a day in court and we can all repeat our arguments and see if there are any new ones. And after that, we will get a verdict. After that, probably an appeal. I'm not sure who will appeal because I'm not sure who will win. Of course, I'm confident we will win, but it's always hard to predict what the courts will do. So I don't want to speculate too much about what the lawsuit is going to do, because we still have a full round of arguments to go, and we still need to figure out exactly what we are going to say, and I would like to see what BREIN comes up with next. But I'd like to talk a little about what I see as some of the problems with copyright online and copyright law as it works today, because this fight between FTD and BREIN, I see it as somewhat antique, overbodig, superfluous, because this is a debate that should have been done by the lawmaker about 10 years ago. But we are still stuck with that copyright law from 1912 that regulates how materials can be used and what can be done with material that was created by other people. And this law really needs to be adapted. It should have been adapted a long time ago to fit in better with the information society. But the last thing that was done to fix the law was to strike the number 1912 from the title, because that made it clear that the law no longer was from 1912. So copyright law really was designed to protect printers, to protect people that copy materials in a large industry setting. I know you have a couple people, a couple of institutions that allow you to copy things and to multiply things, and in that context it makes sense to regulate that copying, because printing is expensive and preparing books for printing is expensive. So there's investments going on that need to be protected to stimulate the printing and distribution of books. But today, printing, copying, distributing works is no longer a specialized activity that happens in some handful of locations, some printing presses and some printing offices. Everybody copies. You copy things thousands of times, but you even link to things that are made available elsewhere. You republish materials by linking to it, by embedding it, by distributing it elsewhere. And all of this is regulated by copyright. Every single copy you make is a copyright infringement, unless you can find an exception in the law. Every hyperlink that you make is arguably an illegal act if it points to something that should not be online. Every time you make, for example, an embedded YouTube movie, the Buma Stemra would like to have some money from you because you are republishing that movie simply by copying that embed tag from YouTube in your own movie. So as Larry Lessig says, everything you do touches upon copyright. Everything you do with electronic works or works in digital form requires permission from the copyright holder unless you can prove otherwise. And this is supported by laws and international treaties like the WIPO Copyright Treaty, the DMCA, which you may have heard of, and the European Copyright Directive, which is basically a copy of the DMCA that says the same thing. Everything you do requires permission from the copyright holder unless you can prove otherwise, and even then you probably need to pay money. And if somebody puts a protection measure on it, you are not allowed to circumvent or break it. And if you do that, you're acting illegally and you could even go to jail for that. This is a big problem. Together with the heavy-handed rhetoric from copyright holders and industry lobby groups and their enforcement practices like arresting minors or elderly people that don't even have a computer, you see a complete erosion of all the respect that people had for copyright law, if any, to the point where things become a parody of themselves. This is an actual ad from the UK, where they don't even bother arguing that copying is bad. It's just linked to terrorism in the hopes that you will feel scared and not copy anymore. And this actually creates a complete opposite feeling among many people. If copyright holders argue that copying is equal to terrorism, people do not take copyright holders seriously anymore. Copyright law becomes harder to accept, impossible to accept. It becomes ridiculous to a point. And this is why we now see counter-movements like the Pirate Party, for which this is the flag. People now really see this is getting beyond ridiculous, this needs to be fixed. But how can we fix copyright? This is a big problem because copyright is firmly entrenched in all those treaties and laws that I showed you, from old to new. And if you want to change copyright in any way, it needs to fit within all those treaties, or you need to repeal all those treaties. And repealing all those treaties is extremely difficult, especially the Berne Convention, which is over 100 years old. Yes, please.
Before you sum up all the legal hurdles, why don't you tell us how you would like the copyright law to be?
How would I like copyright law to be? I will get to that in a moment. But fixing copyright law is extremely difficult because among lawmakers and lobbyists there is still a strong perception that copyright is good, or at least it brings in a lot of money for the copyright holders, therefore it must be good. If you look at the USA, for example, they have lots of money that goes to China in particular, so lots of exports, and they actually have two sources of income, which is the weapons industry and the copyright industry. So the USA is rather attached to its copyright laws and will not easily accept any changes in copyright law if it means that the lobbyists from Hollywood will get less money. But I think we have to change copyright law, and it has to be done soon because we are creating a complete disconnect between what the law says and what actually happens. And what we see now is people in technical fields, people like you, going ahead and doing fun stuff, doing great stuff, doing creative stuff, but often illegal stuff, like hyperlinking or copying things, adding a picture to Wikipedia, or you name it. You are probably infringing hundreds of copyrights a day, even without realizing it. This cannot go on. This cannot be for a long time, because we will only create a complete disrespect for copyright law, and we will create a law that is completely at odds with current practice. So we need to change copyright law to make sure that it more closely fits with current practice. Now, history of copyright, I will not go into too much detail about that. It's long and boring, and I only read Van Nul tot Nu, so I don't know much about history. But copyright is today regarded as a form of intellectual property, or actually a form of property, more or less. I have created this presentation, therefore it is mine, and I alone decide what happens with it. So HAR is lucky that they can videotape it, because I gave them that permission. but somebody in the back was just photographing me. I did not give permission to do that. So I have the right to sue you, and if I want it badly enough, I can have you thrown in jail for that. So that's what copyright law says. This is completely wrong. I see some friends are making a citizen's arrest already. That's great. Okay. Thank you. So, yeah, I had a friend who always said, well, it's better to ask forgiveness than to seek permission. But copyright law does not work that way, unfortunately. And this is actually a big problem, because every time people say, hey, I can create this great mashup, or I can combine this with that, link that information to it, and then I have my own iPhone application that can synchronize the weather with, I don't know, the train station, and it can tell me whether I should take a taxi or wait for a bus because it will rain. You are infringing copyrights. You are violating licenses, and you are doing things that are illegal. Because all those sites and all that information is the intellectual property of their owners. And this is a big problem, because if you have to get permission in advance for every picture, every API you want to use, every piece of information you want to get from a website, or every sound file you want to reuse, it becomes impossible to actually get work done. Because getting permission for one book that you want to republish, we can do it. But if you need 40,000 pictures to create a mashup, you need to get 40,000 permission slips from people. That's just unworkable. But this is the way that the law is structured. Intellectual property, you create it, you own it, you decide it. Just like I decide what I do with my front lawn. And this idea of property has to do with scarcity. The idea is to create artificial scarcity, or maybe there's actual scarcity back in the days where you would print on paper. It's difficult, it's hard to print things, so books are more or less rare. It's hard to create books, it's hard to copy books, and therefore people that copy books should have protection in their investment. What you get from scarcity is people that act protective. I was going to use a silo, but then I decided I'm Dutch, so let's use a windmill. People hoard their own material. They put it in their vaults, and they are very protective of it, because if you lose it, you lose money. Every bag of grain that this miller has is his property, and it's valuable because he can sell it. And if other people take it, he has lost his flour or whatever it is, and he will lose money. So there's this idea of scarcity, of value because of scarcity. That is the current view of copyright. That is what is being protected today. But on the internet, there is no scarcity. There is no reason for that scarcity, because everybody can copy, and it costs you nothing. Everybody can give away and distribute things, and it costs you, well, basically nothing. Because you can give it away for free, and other people will give it away for you. It will go on BitTorrent, on Usenet, on all kinds of networks, and everybody makes it available to everybody else. So the old ideas that it's difficult and costly to produce things, the old assumptions that you need huge investments to print books and distribute books, are no longer valid. And if the underlying assumptions are no longer valid, then the law that rests upon them also no longer is valid, or at least should no longer be valid. And it needs to be changed, it needs to be adapted to the new way of working, the new culture that we have. And some people say, yeah, but without a financial incentive, nobody will create anymore. That's the most frequent line from Hollywood and the music industry. People will no longer make music if they do not get paid for it. Well, that's utter rubbish. Maybe some people will no longer do it, but there's always people that will only produce things for money. But most people, most creative people, do it because it's fun, or maybe they have this internal urge, this drive that they have to publish their stuff, that they have to create their stuff. And they will give it away, and they will publish it, and maybe they will give it away for free, maybe they will publish it for free, or maybe they will need some kind of financial reward. Sure. But what's wrong with seeking a new model that fits around the way that you, maybe what's wrong with finding a new model, a new way of making money, assuming that your work will be given away for free? For example, in the past, artists would make money by selling CDs. Today, CD sales have dropped, And what you see now is more and more concerts and public performances, because that's the way to make money today. There are more and more artists that give away their work themselves, or at cost, or even below cost. Just give it away for free, because people will like your music and they will buy a ticket to hear you play. That's a new way of making money with music. You can do the same thing with movies. Yes, please.
Do you also have a new model for writers, because they can't give like a concert of their writings or something like that?
Yeah. So what can you do for writer? How can writers make money under this new model?
Yeah, because it's mainly the publishing that keeps them going.
Yeah, a good question. What do you do for writers? Well, actually, I'm a writer myself. I publish the book, and I publish a blog every day, and I give away my work for free. And my business model is that people will think I'm an expert, and so they will pay me lots of money to give them advice for their specific situation. So that's my business model as a writer. My brother is a writer as well. He sells his books and then hopes that people will hire him to become a consultant. So that's a way to work. Yeah. So what if you're... So this is for non-fiction, as it's called. You promote yourself, your own businesses, you let yourself be hired. If you write pure fiction, like stories, well, it's a little more difficult, because nobody will hire you to be a consultant if you write science fiction. Well, rarely anybody. You can have a reading, so you can sit on a stage and read from your own book, but many writers are not good readers, so I'm not sure if that's a valid business model. Yes, please.
Okay, so you asked what is wrong with that, and the answer is very simple. If you want to do that, current copyright lets you do that.
Yeah.
Current copyright lets me sell my books for royalties to a publisher. But if you change the copyright that your model becomes the only one, then it doesn't matter to you, because you could already do what you want to do, but it does means that I am forced now to give away my stuff which I don't want to do. So your idea is stupid, so go away, don't bother us.
So ignoring the personal attack, if you want to do it this way right now, you can do it. You can waive your copyright, you can use a BSD license, or if you like Richard Stallman, you can use the GPL and try to impose your views of copyright on it. But why does the law need to be changed? Why should this idea that I just gave be the default? Because right now, the default is royalties and every copy is controlled. Well, the reason why we need to change the default is because the current default does not work anymore. Right now, people are copying so much, they are distributing so much, and nobody thinks this is wrong anymore. Only the authors, perhaps, that feel threatened in the revenue that they earn. Yes, please.
I don't think there is such thing as a maker in culture. There's no such thing as a maker of culture. You're always building on the shoulders of the previous makers of culture. It's never really your own. So there's no real reason to say, well, I created it, this is mine, you should pay me money.
Yeah.
It doesn't go.
Yeah. So culture, right now we are treating culture as property. So Walt Disney created the Walt Disney universe, and they created cars, which I saw yesterday, and they regard it as their property. But as you say, if I heard you correctly, everybody builds on somebody else's stuff. People combine things to create new culture. And correct me if I'm wrong, please.
It's even the thing that made us rule this planet, learn from each other.
Yeah.
So trying to stop it by means like patents or copyright is actually stupid.
Yeah. So, I'm sorry, could you? So, these things exist because at the time these laws were adopted, give me a second, they made sense. In an era where it was very costly and expensive to set up research, it was felt necessary to adopt patents to allow you to earn that back, assuming a particular business model, which was, you are going to make lots of TVs and you are going to sell them. And then every TV will bring in money, and that you can use to recover your investments. The same with copyright. You are going to write books, and you will sell them in bookstores, and everybody will pay you money for one copy, every copy costs money, so we need to protect that source of revenue for you. So these laws protect the business models that made sense back when they were adopted, but they no longer make sense now. Yes, please.
As a practical side note to the previous comment that you build on the shoulders of others, so there's no, you're not an author. I mean, there's still, practically speaking, being devil's advocate, a certain amount of labor involved in creating things. And I mean, of course, where it's possible to fund creation without getting paid for it, that's great. But I also think that, for example, a levy system or a system where there's tax money distributed through a popularity ranking or surveys or whatever method is used to decide what is good culture would be an optimum, like having not just one free market, which is real goods, physical goods based on scarcity, but also a second free market which rewards things that are useful and popular.
Yeah. So, absolutely valid point. It's always very difficult to figure out what the best way should be, or which way to make money, or which way to reward people for creating stuff should be adopted. The problem is, this is not science. This is law, politics, economics. In science, you can set up a double-blind controlled experiment and see where most works would be created. Unfortunately, as far as I know, we don't have a parallel Earth where we can set up that experiment. So we have to guess and argue and say, well, today this model seems more valid, so let's give it a shot. And next year or next decade or the next century, we're going to need a new model. And we're going to try this new model because it's clear that this model is going to be broken, or it's already broken, and we're artificially keeping it alive.
Arnoud, I think I have to make some correction to what you just said. In 1868, in the Netherlands, the patent law has been discarded because it was too unwieldy, too complex, it broke down. Thorbecke, one of the founders of our constitution, dismissed it. That stayed until 1912. Copyright law was kept very short and limited for the same reasons. Yes. Liberals, classical liberals, had no idea about intellectual property. They saw it as an intellectual privilege. And privileges are something from the Baroque or the medieval time.
Yes.
So there have been studies, because Switzerland has done the same thing in the 19th century, about how innovation happened. I know some book, Eric Schiff of the American Enterprise Institute in 1971 wrote this study. So they compared, because that is the best case to make, because it has happened, two major advanced nations, Switzerland and the Netherlands, for about 50 years, have done without patent law and with very limited copyright laws. Yes. Only due to international pressure from mainly France, Germany, England, in 1912 we got these copyright laws.
Yeah.
And so if you start to make, there have been parallel worlds. Yeah. You can now not set up a new one, but you can do it. It's just a change in your law and your mindset of your people. And effectively we have such a world today, it's called China.
Yeah. True, it is for a large part international lobbying and international pressure. Like what you said in the 19th century, the Dutch were called a country of highwaymen or highway robbers because they took other people's intellectual property. They would reprint books, recreate patented inventions in the Netherlands because they could, there was no law on it. And today what you still see is large pressure, especially from the United States, that tries to impose its views on how copyright should work, how intellectual property should work, or maybe I should even say that there is such a thing as intellectual property, to force people to adhere to these views and to have laws that adhere to these views. So you can say, well, we have laws, so let's change them. But unfortunately, this is very complicated because these laws are firmly entrenched in international treaties, and lots of them, including the BREIN Convention of, if I remember correctly, 1886. And to change that, we need permission, we need consensus, unanimity from 176 countries, which is never going to happen, unfortunately. So getting back to this whole idea of free culture, like Larry Lessig called it, the idea that there should be more room for people to reuse other people's works. to get one thing clear, I'm not advocating that we abolish copyright completely. I'm not saying that we should get back to complete anarchy and saying everybody can do whatever they want. I do recognize that authors and creators have some interest in the work that they create and that they should have some exclusive rights that allow them to, well, stimulate, or that stimulates them to create more of these works. For example, the right to be named as an author is a very important right. Even in open source, you see that. Even the most liberal open source license, which I think is the MIT license, says you have to keep our name on the software. Even the most liberal Creative Commons license, which Mr. Lessig invented, says you have to put my name on it. And this is because being recognized as the author, if you're not even recognized as the author, there is really no way that people can identify you, get back to you, and there is no way that you can build a business model around that if people don't know that you create stuff. Yes, please.
Maybe we should replace the word author with contributor.
Maybe we should replace author with contributor. That's a very good idea. I'm going to go that in a minute because that's actually one of the final points I wanted to make. I was going to say, well, about this thing free culture, we should be saying that information wants to be free because that's the famous internet motto. But if you look to the original source of this motto, you will see that there is actually a more balanced view from Mr. Stuart Brand, who first said this. And he said, well, it's not so much that information wants to be free, period. Information, on the one hand, wants to be expensive because it's difficult to create, it's valuable once you have it, and in some cases, if you're the only one with information, you can do better than other people. If you are the only one that knows that some stocks are going up, that's valuable information. If you're the only one that knows what the world looks like, you can make a fortune selling maps. But on the other hand, information wants to be free because it is, well, not just getting lower, the cost of copying, it's more or less approaching zero at this point. So information wants to be free, or information wants to be copied just because it can be copied so easily. If everybody can copy it, everybody will copy it. And that's the balance that we need to strike. The idea that on the one hand there is value in information and there's value in control, but on the other hand that everybody wants to be copying these materials, everybody wants to distribute these materials, information wants to be free. So something wants to be expensive and wants to be free at the same time. And that, I think, is a fundamental point that needs to be recognized in any copyright law or author's law or contributor's law that regulates how information should be copyable when people have the right to use works that other people created or contributed to. Thank you. So, earlier this year I attended a lecture by the Canadian legal scholar Abraham Dressenower, who proposed that we now go to the situation where it's not just one person, but many contributors work on these things. So it's not just one person in a silo writing a book and throwing it over the hedge. It's lots of people that work together, that contribute together, that have a dialogue with each other, contributing from the one hand, from the other hand, from the third hand, from the fourth hand, in creating those works and making those works available. And he proposes the idea that all these different authors should be put on the same line. All these contributors should have equal rights in the work that they create. And if you have a way that you can add value to that work, if you have a way that allows a powerful new way or a socially valuable new way of exploiting these works, you should be allowed to do so. We should focus around the conversations that happen with these intellectual works. So not just, I have a picture, therefore it's mine, but no, I have a picture and it's on Flickr or any other site, and some people have created a great way of putting pictures to music, for example. That's a great new conversation that's being started, a new way of exploiting these works. That's a great new thing, it's socially valuable, and it should be allowed. I have no idea how to do it, maybe some people have ideas. Right now we cannot do it, but why can we not do it? So this is the conversation, putting people that use works on equal footing with the authors, making everybody a contributor, as someone just said, and allowing everybody to use, exploit, and distribute these works. And that, if you put it together, is, in my view, a much better way of working with copyrighted works, or I should say, working with creative works, than the property thinking that we have right now. And yeah, to put it in the words of Drassenauer, you should be entitled to use other people's work if you make sure that you respect the equal authorship of all the other people that contribute to the work. So it's no longer the first creator that decides what happens. It's all the people that contribute to the work that should be allowed to work with these materials. And if you have a new way of exploiting that work, if you start a new conversation, as it were, like putting pictures to music, you become a contributor, you become a new author, and you should have these rights to do it. Basically, if you take other people's work and you put your own name on it, you would be still violating copyright, because then you are repeating an existing conversation. You are not respecting the authorship of other people. But if you do something new with the work, if you transform it into another channel, if you open up a novel way or a novel market, you should have the right to do that. And this, I believe, is a great way of moving forward and creating a new author's law or a contributor's law that allows everybody to use these works as happening today, and it still gives the author some of the respect he deserves and some ways of exploiting these works himself. Yes, please.
It's a nice philosophical discussion about information that wants to be free, but isn't the problem that you're looking to find one way to manage the information and sharing the picture of my cat and protecting a $60 million movie? I think those goals are not compatible in a way. There's too much difference in what people want to, how do you say it? The goal of the laws you're trying to find here.
Could you repeat that?
Well, it's partly philosophical. It's about information want to be free, but there's also parties who just want to protect expensive things to make. There's movies that cost millions of dollars, and at this time it's the same laws protecting those two things, and they're just not compatible.
So right now you see indeed $60 million movies being made, and the companies that produce them saying they're our property, and we would not be making these expensive movies if we did not have the classic copyright.
Or just somebody writing a book. It's still the same thing. It's one person making a lot of effort to make this one thing. And it's not compatible with somebody just making a picture of his cat and putting it on Flickr.
In a sense, that's true. But it goes back to the original question, why would you create works and how much effort would you put into it? And what kind of model would you have of recovering that investment? Mm-hmm. So right now, for example, Hollywood could not work under this model because they are built around the model that says if you create it, you own it, and everybody that thinks about the movie needs to pay money. That's basically, well, a little exaggerated, but that's basically what it is. Yeah. It's only if you hum the tune that you have to pay, if you do it out loud. But I don't think it's a good justification of saying, well, the industry is built this way, therefore we must go on forever like this. If the underlying assumptions change, like it's difficult to copy things, or there will only be a few creators, if those assumptions are no longer true, then we need to change the laws, and we need to change, well, the industry will have to change. It will have to adapt to that. Yeah. And we will maybe not get $60 million Walt Disney movies. Right now we are seeing promotion of active euthanasia, for example. So yes, if it becomes socially acceptable to do things, I don't think the law should stand in the way that was 100 years ago. Walter.
Allow me to ask two questions in a row. First of all, let me be a bit pedantic about your remark about photographing you. Taking a picture is never infringement. Publishing may be infringement in case of pictures of individual persons. Just to make sure that no one goes away with the impression that making a picture of Arnold right now might be copyright infringement. Mm-hmm. Publishing it might be. And to get back to my real question, would you think that the old system, as we know it now, might coexist with new systems if you would reintroduce the American concept of registration of copyright?
The concept of?
Register. Copyright registers.
Levies.
Yeah, so you could only enforce your copyright or have a copyright in the current sense of property if you took the effort to register your works at the copyright office.
So this is the registration of copyright. It's one of the ideas also promoted by Larry Lessig. The idea there is, well, right now, for example, if you want to use 40,000 different works, it's impossible because you have to hunt down and get permission from 40,000 people, and this is impossible. So you could streamline this process and say, I'm going to set up a big copyrightpedia, and everybody can register themselves, and if you need 40,000 permissions, well, you just search through the database, takes you an afternoon, and then you have the 40,000 authors. That works for a certain extent, but still you have this problem that you need to get permission to do your own creative stuff.
It would be even more than just tracking down or solving the rights clearance problem. It would also solve the problem of the gentleman earlier on who said, please go away, because I still want to earn royalties out of my books.
Yeah.
It would allow him to say, well, I want to keep this default I have now, and it will allow others to pick another default. It would only give him the tiny burden of registering his books.
Yeah. So you could say, well, right now, I think I have the next quote, with the idea with Creative Commons set up as an alternative model. If you want to play with the Creative Commons model and you want to give away your work for free, go ahead and do it. You want to write open source and give it away for free, go ahead, do it. But we are Microsoft, or we are Adobe, or we are Warner, and we want to do it this way, and the law gives us this model, so we are going to do it this way. In principle, I would agree with that because it's the most liberal view. It allows people to do it in the way they want. But the problem here is that it assumes the silo model. So you want to write your books in your silo, go ahead. We want to write our books in our silo, go ahead. And I'm saying there should not be silos anymore.
No, my question was apparently not clear enough. How would you feel about a model where you could either pick the default of, let's say, one flavor of Creative Commons if you did nothing, or by just a single act of registering, which would be in this digital age, would be simple through a website, choosing the current default.
Yeah.
That would be
it's very hard to hear you because I'm just behind the microphone. So,
shall I repeat my question now? My suggestion was, or my thought that just popped in my mind was, what about having two defaults? The current default of a property-like concept, and which could be achieved through registration, and a even more default even of one flavor of Creative Commons or the GPL or whatever you pick. That's just a minor implementation detail as far as I'm concerned. But this would allow the Hollywood to stay on producing those big budget productions and would allow us to tinker. A hybrid of patent model, or registration model. Trademark is also a registration model.
So I see I have to wrap things up, so I appreciate the question. I'm not saying I have all the wisdom and it should be done in this particular way. I do not have a proposal for a new copyright law, but what I feel is that we need to rethink copyright in such a way that it's no longer the property thinking that we have today, where one author has the absolute say of what happens with the work. There should be equal authorship, equal rights between the people that contribute to the work and the people that find new ways of reusing those works. And how exactly we're going to do this, well, that's a topic of debate for the coming years, and I hope to be contributing to that, and please, everybody else, contribute to that as well. I would like to discuss this further offline. In any case, I thank you for your attention so far and all the valuable remarks that you've made. Hope to see you again next time, and feel free to email me with any views you have. Thank you.